How does a bloody Sicilian martyr from the 3rd century connect to a wholesome Scandinavian winter festival? She was burned and she was stabbed for her convictions, and now all over Sweden a lady walks down a hallway with a fire crown and a red sash around her waist symbolizing blood. How the heck did we get here? So yeah, today we're delving into the Swedish tradition of Lucia and how she went from a saint in the Catholic Church to a personification of the devil in female form in midwinter festivities, all the way back to a bringer of light that is celebrated all across Sweden every year. Kindergartners just choose their own Lucia and they walk down a hallway singing a song to their very tired parents. Yeah, let's get into it.
Morbid history.
So this story really has everything. You have hope, you have horror, and some fire safety concerns. But I think that we should start with who was Saint Lucia, or Saint Lucy as she's called sometimes. Saint Lucia of Syracuse was born sometime in the 3rd century after death, as it AD, yeah. And she was not your typical lady of Italy, Syracuse, yeah, down there in southern Europe. No, she was an extremely beautiful young lady, and she was extremely devout. She was Christian, and this wasn't something that people would accept during these days. Christianity was seen as a no-no. They did not really like it that much. As said, she was seen as extremely beautiful, so when she grew up, it wasn't a big surprise to anyone that she would have a few suitors on her hand. She was not having it though, because, you know, the suitors, they weren't Christian. She was. She decided that she wanted to remain a virgin for Christ and never marry. This wasn't accepted at all by the suitors. They were angry. One of them was, in some stories, even a prince. He was in love with her because she had such sparkling, beautiful eyes. But she was so determined not to get married that she gouged her own eyes out to not be that pretty, I guess, and to dissuade the suitors. Sadly for her, or good, I guess, God was so happy with her that the Virgin Mary came down and gave her a new set of eyes, even more beautiful than the first ones, so that didn't help. All these suitors became so angry after a while that they decided to prosecute her for being Christian. And that was a demise sentence. They wanted to remove her from her life subscription. The stories say that first they needed to remove her from her home, but she wouldn't budge. She was like a divine paperweight, and they put some ropes around her and tried to move her from her place by oxes. They were like dragging her, didn't help. So then they decided that it was to try and burn her where she stood. So they put some wood underneath her and put it ablaze, but the fire wouldn't touch her. Godly intervention. Yay! So she was not going out. Not until they finally took a sword and plunged it into her. Some accounts say through neck and some say through the stomach. There was blood either way, and finally she succumbed to the tries. And of course, this is a thing that the Christian church really liked. She was a martyr, and soon she became a saint. She's usually depicted with a sword through her neck and holding a plate of her own eyes, symbolizing her sacrifice, taking them out, gouging them, yeah. Pretty nice, yay. And how then does this neat little story travel all the way up to the northern parts of Europe, Scandinavia, Sweden, to become one of our most beloved Christmas traditions in a country that's historically Protestant, and not only that, full of atheists? Well, let's get into that part. So, when Santa Lucia, Saint Lucy, became a saint, she got her very own day in the calendar, of course, and that was the 13th of December. That's important because here in Sweden, we were crazy old pagans back in the days, and the 13th of December marked the darkest day of the year, where the nights were extremely long and the days were extremely short. Most people have already heard of Midsummer, so this was the opposite of Midsummer, because Midsommar celebrated the brightest day of the year, and in the opposite corner, Midvinter was celebrating, or whatever you want to call it, a day for the dark times. And of course it would be associated with evil things afoot, like witches and trolls and all that folklorian goodness. It was a night when all that was closer than ever. The veil between their world and our world was at its thinnest. So during these dark nights, to ward off evil spirits, witches, trolls and ghosts or whatever, people would stay up all night lighting candles or even bonfires to scare the dark away. So when Christianity finally rocked up, they saw an opportunity, as they always did, to take one festivity, celebration, and just switch it up to something else. And since Lucia's day was already the 13th of December, and she signified light and stuff, the merge was already there. Continue doing what you're doing, but just say that you're doing it for Lucia, and we're all good. Thing was that even though the church came and just switched that up, old folklore and traditions still lived on. You can't just snuff that out whichever way you please. No. So when the people would be sitting there in the pews in the church listening to the priest preaching, they would hear the name Lucifer, and that sounds kinda like Lucia. From that, it just spinned on into Lucia, Lucifer, Lucy. Why not? And this then became a completely new and different entity altogether. They were thinking that Lucifer or Lucy that the priest is talking about sounds like a bad person indeed. So in that roundabout way, we landed in Lucy, some kind of evil super witch that would come on December 13th and mess your home up. They would steal your cows, steal your food, steal your everything. Just not a good thing at all. And that would be the overarching theme for hundreds of years forward. It was said that if you hadn't prepared your home, all of it, before December 13, then Lucy would come and do all those evil things. So it was important to be done and ready. It was a very magical night. It was said that cows could talk. The funny thing was that if you eavesdropped on the cows and listened to them talking, both you and the cow would depart. So don't do that. Of course, it wasn't all doom and gloom. Feasts would be prepared to mark the end of that agriculture year, and candles would be lit, and you would bless your house to make sure that Lucy did not show up, or any other creepy creatures for that matter. One story tells that it was Lucy's fault that Sweden had so many trolls and nissar and tomtar that would come and wreak havoc, basically. It was said that she was at home one day and she had all her children. Who was the father? I don't actually know, but she was at home and God came to visit, but half of her children were dirty, so she hid them outside in a little shed. But God said, "You can't hide something from me, so now I will hide your children so no one can see them." And in Swedish folklore, trolls and creatures and all of these are actually called the dolda, or the hidden. So that makes sense. It's said that she is the mom to all of these creatures and evil. As late as 1951, there is records of a farmer who was asked who Lucia was, and he said that it was an evil woman and drunkard. So it was an entity of its own, and it had nothing to do with the Catholic saint anymore. It was also common for children and youngsters to dress up and go walking from house to house and ask for food and drink. They would be dressed up as scary creatures, kind of like an early form of Halloween. Through the years, it would also include that girls dressed as boys and boys dressed as girls, because that was so much fun back then. What's not entirely clear here, though, is that the modern version of Lucia, which we're getting into soon, how did that evolve out of that? The first mention of a modern Lucia wasn't until the 18th century, and the tradition of dressing up somehow merged with the Christian version of Lucia, and it all ended up in people dressing up as Lucia herself, with a white gown and a red ribbon around symbolizing blood, and a fire crown, no, a candle crown, which was supposed to be a Gloria, because she was a saint indeed. Usually it was a servant girl who got the honor of doing so. She would then walk into the sleeping quarters of what we can only assume is her boss, and dressed as Lucia with the candles and everything, offering some yummy things on a plate and some mulled wine. Sometimes back then they even had wings, just to really hammer down the saintliness of it all. Everyone liked that. They cheered, how quaint, how festive, and it just snowballed. It was in 1920, sometime there, that Sweden had its very first Lucia competition. And a girl won, and she was paraded through Stockholm as Stockholm, Sweden's first proper Lucia. And the people thoroughly enjoyed that even more. So today it's a firm staple of Christmas traditions here in Sweden. On the 13th of December every year, a huge train of children or people of any age in some places follow the Lucia, who's at the front, as they sing some songs. They do this in churches, they do this in all the schools. I remember when I was a kid and we all waited on who would become our school's Lucia. The ones who didn't got to be tärnor. We did not have the fire crowns. Instead, we had tinsels, that you have around Christmas trees, around our hair and around our midsection. It wasn't as fancy, but it's what we got. And the boys would be dressed up as tiny Santas or gingerbread men or stjärngossar, which is star boys. I think as Sweden became kinda Christianized in the later years, that's when the pagan version slowly faded and mixed together with the Christian roots. And today, there's not many Christians left here in Sweden, but we still celebrate it because we get to eat some lussekatter. These are some yellow buns called lussekatter, or devil cats, as it's also called in kind of a translation there. A staple, of course, on Lucia. So yeah, we have our lussekatter as a reminder of our pagan origins here in Lucia. Every year, there's like a big televised Lucia too, where they sing the regular Lucia songs and all that, and you get to tune in if you're a hermit like me and you don't want to go out and find yourself a Lucia festive thing. Why would I do that? I can watch it on TV with my mulled wine and lussekat.